Hi, my name is Tori Shendel Cox, and I'm the Virginia G. Schrader Curator of Art at the Evansville Museum of Arts, History, and Science. And today I'm very excited to show our viewers some of the amazing research that our interns have done this past semester. So from the University of Evansville, we'd like to welcome Loretta and Isaac.
Hello.
Hey. So, hello, my name is Isaac Bates, and I currently attend the University of Evansville as a sophomore. I grew up in the small town of Charlestown in southern Indiana, and I graduated from the high school there in 2019. I am an archaeology major and plan to minor in anthropology and history. I've always enjoyed learning about history, and I've known since my freshman year in high school that I wanted to pursue a career in archaeology. As of now, I'm leaning toward an occupation in cultural resource management, but I'm still open to various careers that relate to archaeology and history.
My name is Loretta Wachter. I am a second-year archaeology student at the University of Evansville as well. I'm originally from upstate New York, but I came out to the University of Evansville for the archaeology degree that they provide. I've always been interested in history, but it wasn't until in my sixth grade year of middle school, my teacher taught me about ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia and Greece, and I really got excited about digging up just ancient ideas, really. As of the moment, I'm very excited and interested in the war aspect of archaeology, specifically weapons in World War II. After I graduate from the University of Evansville, I hope to go to the Norwich University in Vermont to pursue a degree in military history. I'm also very grateful for the guidance and support from the University of Evansville Archaeology and Art History Department, as well as from my family and friends. And we also like to extend our thanks further to the main advisor for this internship, Dr. Alan Kaiser, who is the head professor of archaeology at the University of Evansville. He's worked in several different archaeological projects around the world, including Spain, Italy, Greece, Israel, England, and the Caribbean island of Nevis. He also runs some digs in the United States. Specifically, there is one on campus that he runs as part of a class called Tin City. He has a PhD in archaeology from Boston University and is the author of 3 books and numerous scholarly articles. His research has focused on Roman urbanism and the use of computer technology to discover new information in old excavations, and he has been very helpful to this project in the process of it.
So overall, this opportunity provided me with a very unique and rewarding internship experience. I learned so much about Roman history, coinage, and just the overall process of cataloging artifacts for a museum, information that I didn't really expect to learn so much about this early. I anticipate that this knowledge will be helpful in my further studies and possibly in my future career. I am very thankful to the staff at the Evansville Museum and the professors at the University of Evansville's Department of Archaeology and Art History for this amazing experience.
The internship has also had the same qualities for me as well, and I'm also very excited over the fact that we got to do it at such a young age. Both of us are in our second year of college, and this kind of opportunity isn't normally presented until we are in our master's degree or in a high-paying job at this point. I think that overall, it wasn't just the coins that's helpful, that will help us in the future, but really just the process of doing it. What to do, giving a plan to do it, meeting these dates with enough time for any kind of mistakes that might have been made or any adjustments that should have been made. So that is very impressive that we were able to do it at this point. And also the frustrations that we might have encountered, like I had trouble with finding specific websites for things. And I think that's good that we encountered that now so that we can use that in the future in order to not make the same mistakes or to avoid that frustration that we had at this time.
It's always a learning curve when taking on these projects, no matter where you are in your career. So it's definitely unbelievably impressive that both you and Isaac were able to not only tackle this project, there were over 90 coins, but to do it in one semester. So we are very excited and grateful for all the work and dedication that each of you have put into this project, as well as Dr. Kaiser, and the Evansville Museum is always excited to work with students and professors alike.
So also, we just wanted to take time to express our gratitude to the donor Without their donation, this experience wouldn't have been possible. So on the right, you see Robert and Rena Lewin. Rena was the wife of Robert and was always at his side supporting him in everything he did. So after Robert served in the Polish army, he became an art dealer in London and a noted philanthropist. He endowed the chair of philosophy at Pembroke College in Oxford, England, and a gallery at the Ashmolean Museum, also in Oxford, and the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. So from their historical artifacts to their investments in renowned artists, their collections influenced British and Israeli museums and galleries for decades. But we had an American connection to them through their nephew, Mark Vivoda. He continues their legacy through the Vivoda Family Trust. The mission of the trust is to carry the message of Robert and Rena Lewin.
So in order to begin this project, we were handed the coins and they weren't photographed, they were not identified. We had to start from scratch in this project. So the first thing that we had to do was we were presented the coins and we had to photograph them because we couldn't identify them all in that one day that we had to start this project in. So the first thing was obviously the photography. And we also had to do the initial measurements, measuring the weight and the diameter and also the y-axis for the coins, which is the alignment of the obverse and reverse of the coins. For the photography, we experimented with different angles of light. And as you can see in the picture, the light is off to the side. It's coming at an angle to the photograph, which is called a raking light. It allows us to see more of the surface, and it allows more either concave or convex parts of the coin to be seen from different angles that you might not be able to see from that vertical light. After we photographed and measured all the coins, we had to get into the identification and research part. That took all itself 3 months about. But what we had to do was we had each of the coins, we had a list of the coins, and it was divided 40 for Isaac, 40 for me. And we had to find the best match of already identified coins basing off of professionals and other researchers who have found other coins. And we find the one that is the best match, and we write everything we can about it. And then we also have to find all the possible information for the coins that are not identifiable. Some of them were worn beyond belief. Some of them, they were off center. You couldn't really see the design. So those were really hard to identify. So we listed all the possible information we could in order to give enough information for future researchers to use this to identify the coins. And the final part, and one of the most important parts of doing any project, is presentation. As you can see, we're doing this presentation for the public, but we also have other information. We have a Word document that has all the information in it that's in a neat, concise area, and also the Excel sheet is more of a professional way to show it, just have an information dump at that point. The Word document is more for everyone to understand and to look at, and this PowerPoint presentation is also helpful to elaborate more on what we've done and how we've achieved it.
So first, I think it's important to have an overall historical context for coinage. Coins, or researchers believe that coins were first introduced as a method of payment in the late 6th or early 5th century BCE. The ancient historian Herodotus believes that Lydians were the first to make coins. However, Aristotle claims that coins were from Phrygia. Modern numismatists, though, consider the first coins to be from the Greek island of Aegina. And here on the right, you can see the location of these places. Phrygia and Lydia are in the modern country of Turkey. And then Aegina is over in Greece between Attica and the Peloponnesus. So after they were minted, coins as a method of payment spread around the world through interactions such as trade and warfare.
Now, each of us chose for conciseness for this presentation, we each chose 2 coins that we found to be the most interesting, that displayed certain aspects of different cultures that the coins were a part of. For this, I will do my 2 first, and Isaac will follow with his. And for one of mine is a Jewish coin. And in order to understand the context behind it, you have to understand the history of Judea. Judea is part of the Palestine area in the Near East. The Palestine area consists of Judea, Samaria, and Galilee. The Samaritans have a Jewish background, but they had a disagreement over different religious techniques, so they did separate from Judea. The leader of Judea was Jewish. He was a hereditary high priest, which was a lifetime position with an advising council of elders. From the beginning, this area was mostly controlled by the Ptolemies from about 320 to 200 BCE. There's always been a conflict between two different sects over the usage of oral traditions. Some of them like it, some of them do not like it. After about 201 BCE, Antiochus III of Seleucid Asia conquered Palestine. He was generous to the Jewish people at first, but then the problems arose between the Ptolemaic and the Seleucid sympathizers. And so really they got angry that there were still people who were supporting the Ptolemies, and the Seleucid rulers grew angry and they massacred thousands and defiled the temple that was most cherished for the Jewish people. After this, the Jewish people in the countryside were very angry, and a man named Mattathias, he died around 166 BCE, sorry. He began a revolt in the countryside known as the Maccabean Revolt. He was not able to see it through to its completion, and it was continued by his son Judas Maccabeus. This ended up in a Seleucid surrender and negotiations for the freedom of Judea in 164 BCE. Following this, there was the Hasmonean dynasty, which was led by a man named John Hyrcanus. He was established as ruler after gaining independence from Seleucid Empire, and his plan, he kept both Ptolemaic Egypt and Seleucid Syria out of Judea. He basically pitted them against each other, that way they wouldn't get distracted by him. He was raised and was sympathetic to a group of Jewish people called the Pharisees, which was a sect that was focused on a strict observance to both traditional and written laws, including oral traditions. But they were incredibly unhappy with the fact that he wanted to be both a priest and a king, and they did not want that. They did not want that meshing of religion and state. So they were very unhappy with him. So he began favoring the other sect of Jewish people, which is the Sadducees, who denied the oral tradition, focusing on the written laws alone. This ended up tumbling into each other after his son, Judah Aristobulus, first used the title of the king, which further enraged the Pharisees, followed by his son, Alexander Jannaeus. He was pro-Sadducee. He actually instigated a persecution of the Pharisees, which created more problems than it solved, as he didn't actually win this battle of sorts. He just claimed that he did, and he massacred thousands of the Pharisees. After this, the Hasmonean Civil War became full tilt as Alexander Jannaeus' sons, John Hyrcanus II and Aristobulus II, who were each leading the opposite sects, began to fight one another in order for full control. Commander Pompey from Rome ended up coming to Judea and solving the civil war by choosing the more mellow Hyrcanus over the aggressive yet popular Aristobulus. Aristobulus surrendered, but his followers did not, and this led to a massacre of his followers as well. And though this seems like a huge information dump, which it is an information dump, it's really important to understand this next coin, because it is the coin of one Alexander Jannaeus, who was one of the leaders of the Hasmonean dynasty. So this coin is known as a Hendon 469. Hendon was a man who helped identify dozens of Jewish coins and biblical coins all around the world. It is a bronze pruta. It was made in Jerusalem sometime between 103 and 76 BCE. On the obverse, which you can see in the top corner, it's rather badly made, to be quite honest, but you can see at the bottom, there is the bottom of a Seleucid anchor, and surrounding it, there is a Greek inscription which says Basileus Alexandros, which means of King Alexander, which does refer to one Alexander Jannaeus. On the reverse, which you can see on the bottom, it is a wheel with 8 ray-like spokes, which it's hard to see because this is such an old coin, and it has a surrounding Hebrew inscription of Yehonadah the king, and Yohanatan was the ancient Hebrew name of Alexander Jannaeus. I thought this coin was very interesting because I didn't know that the Jewish culture was a mix of Greek and Seleucid, and well, I knew it was Hebrew, but it was interesting to see that it was a mix of both Greek and Seleucid cultures on the same coin, despite the fact that they're one group of people and they have all these cultures meshing together. It's very interesting to me. For the next coin, it's important to understand some parts of the Roman religion. We know the Roman religion of having the many gods ruled by Jupiter and Hera. Not Hera, I'm sorry, Juno. Juno is the Roman version. But you also have to learn about the Roman imperial cult. Upon the deaths of many royals, both males and females, whether it's the wives or daughters or sisters of the emperors, the Senate could vote to deify the deceased, meaning they would become equal to a god or goddess, depending on, obviously, whether they're male or female. This is the imperial cult, it is called. Its focus is on the worship of past emperors or empresses. There's no worship of the current emperors, as that would defeat the meaning. You're meant to worship those who've already passed on and to remember them. And the deified deceased people were treated the same as typical deities. They received temples and offerings and prayers. One such temple you can see in the bottom right corner, which is the temple to a deified Emperor Trajan. This is in Pergamon in Anatolia, and this is just one example of what they would do in response to the death of their emperors. On the next slide, you'll see the coin, but for now, the diwa, as part of the obverse inscription, translate to divine. This represents the deceased nature of an individual, as well as the fact that they have been deified and are a goddess. This is also similar to the Catholic process of canonization, which is the process of sainthood. This also happens after a person's death, but it takes much longer. It can be enacted to anyone. It doesn't matter if they were royal or not. It depends on what good they did.
Mhm.
And it also it's a slightly different feeling behind it. With the deified emperors, you worship them and beg them for help, but with the Catholics, it seems that it's less of a worship, but more of a I'm not exactly sure how to put it, but more of a just a belief in them, just to say that they're there and they're looking down on you.
Mhm. I'm
For
just
the
gonna
coin,
write
sorry.
this down real quick just to show this picture of the Catholic Saint Peter, because he was martyred and then turned into a saint, which was definitely one of the prerequisites for the most part of receiving sainthood in Catholicism, which is why this concept is absolutely fascinating, that you could still be alive, you never had to be martyred, you just had to show a pious existence, or that you were worth to be worshipped, whether you were really a god or a goddess, or a male or a female. So I think that's really fascinating that you brought this up. I wanted to scoot us over to show the viewers before we go to the coin.
So the coin is a Roman coin. It is an RIC 3, Antonius Pius 348A. That is basically just a serial number for the coin.
Mm-hmm.
RIC represents Roman imperial coinage, as this was the time during the Empire of Rome. 3 is simply the volume. Antonius Pius is the emperor of that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
And the number is 348A. This is a silver denarius. It was made in Rome. The date is to about 141 CE. On the obverse, as you can see in the upper left corner, it is the bust of Faustina I. Her full name is Ennia Galleria Faustina. She lived between 100 and 140 CE. She was a Roman empress and the wife of Antonius Pius. And if you will notice, the coin date is after her death, which is also more information about the fact that this is made after she died and in remembrance of her. On the reverse, in the bottom left corner, bottom right corner, the Fortuna is who is on there, which is the personification of the idea of fortune, standing with the surrounding inscription of Aeternas, which means eternal in Latin. This could also be a begging, a prayer slightly to Faustina, as asking for divine and eternal fortune from this goddess now. This one also was also interesting just because of the fact that it has a more of a focus on the Roman culture of the religion and of the imperial culture, and also especially the importance of women even in that society, even though they were not looked down upon, but they also weren't put on the highest pedestal. They were empresses, they were deified, but they were not always completely in power. And I think it's interesting that they decided that, you know, you could deify anyone that you wanted as long as you got approval from the Senate, and especially that it's a woman that they deified is very interesting. And next we have Isaac with his 2 coins.
So the vast majority of the coins that we researched were Roman, spanning about 4 centuries. But just to give some overall cultural context for 2 of them, in 248 CE, Philip the Arab called the secular games to celebrate the 1000th anniversary of the founding of Rome by Romulus and Remus. Secular games included sacrifices and theatrical performances for 3 days and 3 nights. They mark the end of each generation or seculum, which is a period of either 100 or 110 years. And this was sort of a practice that they adopted from the preceding culture of the Etruscans, in which time was a very important part of their religion. And also sort of a separate thing, but still worth noting, is the zoomorphic iconography on Philip the Arab's coins. The gazelle was one of several animals that Philip the Arab depicted on his coinage at this time. It may represent his homeland in modern Syria, which was a very unusual birthplace for a Roman emperor. And the other animals that he mainly depicted were lions, stags, elk, and elephants. And for the second coin, it strongly is tied into the plague of Cyprian. And just to give some overall background on that, the plague began in Ethiopia in 250 CE. It was very devastating. It lasted 20 years, and at its height, killed more than 5,000 people a day just in the city of Rome. Researchers have still not been able to identify the disease, but scholars throughout the centuries have suggested it was either typhus, cholera, smallpox, measles, anthrax, a combination of meningitis and acute bacillary dysentery, or a viral hemorrhagic fever. And the 2 latter suggestions are the more modern and suggestions and what it more likely actually was. So it's important because it has a overall visual representation of the plague through coinage. The plague was clearly a monumental challenge for Trebonianus Gallus and his successors. So therefore, they would have needed to appeal to a divine figure like Apollo as an expression of hope that the plague would end. So the first coin is an RIC for Philip I 17, which was an identification I found through the online coin of the Roman Empire catalog. It is a silver Antoninianus made in Rome. It dates to 248 CE. On the obverse is a bust of Philip the Arab, radiate, which is the name of the crown he's wearing, draped, cuirassed, which means that he's wearing military attire. The inscription is IMP Philippus Aug, which translates to Emperor Philippus, Commander-in-Chief. Then on the reverse is the gazelle, and the inscription is Secularis Aug, which translates to the secular games of the emperors, or more broadly, a secularis is something that occurs once a century or generation. The second coin is an RIC for Trebonianus Gallus 32. It is also a silver Antoninianus made in Rome. It only dates to a few years after the previous coin, 251 to 253 CE. On the obverse, it also has a bust of Trebonianus Gallus, radiate, draped, and cuirassed. The obverse inscription translates to Emperor Caesar Caius Fabianus Trebonianus Gallus, Commander-in-Chief. And on the reverse, the god Apollo is nude, holding a branch in his right hand and a lyre set on a rock with his left hand. And the inscription is Apollo Salutari, which translates to Apollo, the bringer of health, which was one of many aspects of the god Apollo. And I chose these coins because they had sort of like a direct relation to specific events in the history of Rome.
Amazing. And so now that we've looked at these coins that you studied, it really shows how diverse and how eclectic this collection is. And with that in mind, what were some of the most challenging aspects of this internship that you could share with us?
I think for me, the most challenging aspect was I have a background in Latin, and I've taken 3 semesters of it thus far. And though I know the Latin words for it, the inscriptions tend to shorten them and cut out vowels, cut out letters. And they also are filled with titles. I mean, you have Emperor this, you have the Father of our country, you have Commander in Chief, you have all these different titles, and there are so many different translations to them. So it's difficult finding one single source to say, this is what the translation should be, because there's so many different sources that say, this is going to be translated as Commander in Chief, and then the other one's like, oh, this is going to be Emperor. So it's kind of hard finding just that one source for the Latin inscriptions and the abbreviations for it. It's just, there's no one site for it. It's a little bit difficult jumping between 3 different sites in order to find the correct identification for one coin. I mean, it was frustrating, but it was also rather amusing just jumping between them and seeing what each one had to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially with having no background in Latin. But probably the most difficult thing for me was when the coins were like really worn, just like there was no inscription to go off of. So you just had to start with what you knew about the coin and just gradually work your way down until hopefully you came up with the right identification. But although it was challenging, it was like a very rewarding skill to develop in this internship.
Yeah, it's always one thing as a researcher, there's no black and white, and very rarely will you ever have the luxury of, as you said, finding one source that actually has what is going on in the artwork, the coin, or especially an archaeological site, because you have to think so abstract to a degree. So do you think this really helped you grow as an archaeologist and as a future professional?
It definitely did help us because it gave us these skills that we need in order to be successful as an archaeologist, no matter what part of archaeology we pursue, whether it's in cultural research management or museums or as a professor or anything we want to pursue. It's very helpful for anything that we want to do.
Also, it just developed like so many life skills like time management and communication and just anything like that.
Well, we certainly appreciate all the work that you've done and all the dedication you gave to this project. So as you said, with time management, we had our interns create their own schedule, their own timeline, and we just gave an end date. And how you get to it, it's up to you. So not only did you guys excel, but you went above and beyond. And really, I can't thank you enough, because through your thoughtful research and careful detail and attention to detail, especially with those titles, you've unlocked these coins, you've unleashed them. We can actually use them because prior to this, the donor had them in a box, and that's just where they sat. So we're very, very grateful that you took this time to really show us not only what is on these coins, but give it historical context so we can use them to educate, which is the purpose of museum collections and repositories. So I can't thank you enough.
We're really grateful for the opportunity to do
that.
this.
And is there anything else you'd like to share? Oh, thank you. Is there anything else you guys would like to share with our viewers today?
I'd say that this was a very rewarding experience. I'm really glad we had this opportunity to do it. Again, it's not what I expected out of my second year as an archaeology student. I certainly didn't expect to get this opportunity until I was much older and much more experienced, but this has been truly amazing. And the fact that we have identified these coins for the first time and we have said that this is what it is, and people are agreeing with it, and people are using that this is what it is, and it's really impressive. And it's kind of scary at the same time that they're kind of saying that, like, oh, these kids know what they're talking about. We might not, and it's altogether possible that some of the coins that we identified, some other numismatist might look at it and say, that's wrong. What were they thinking? But it's a learning experience. Whether we identified it correctly in the beginning or we struggle with it overall, But it was very rewarding experience, and I'm really glad that both of us had the opportunity to do so, and also to work together with with a colleague is really important also as an archaeologist as well. So I'm very happy that we both got the opportunity to do this.
Yeah, I would agree with the sentiments. It was just a great overall experience that I really wasn't expecting. And like you said, I definitely was scared at first, like relying on me to identify these coins, but my confidence definitely grew over time.
And that's an important tidbit to discuss, because whether you're a student or even a professional, it is scary. I don't think that people talk about that enough, because when I do exhibitions, there are times that my friends who are PhD subject matter experts will read my labels after I have written them and will correct me. And it's okay. As long as you do your due diligence and your research to the best of your ability. I think it's amazing that now that we've become more interconnected, that we can share information at faster rates and get more accurate information from that. And so, for example, a Bronzino painting I thought I had, my friend was able to reinterpret, and it's not by Bronzino, it's actually from one of his students. And so it's stuff like that, that it is scary. I understand where you're coming from, and unfortunately that fear doesn't go away, but it's looking at it as more of a better opportunity to strengthen your institutional understanding, your skill sets, but then also having the privilege and the opportunity to get to work with a subject matter expert to help correct things, and that's okay. And this has been a really fun experience, because just again, the more partnerships we can create with the universities, we do appreciate. And don't be a stranger as we progress through this. And we look forward to using these coins, and I'll keep you posted on what more we find out with them. So I really want to thank you guys for your time, your dedication, and all that you've done for the Evansville Museum, for our donor, and for the university. And just a reminder to our public, this is an Evansville Museum of Art, History, and Science recording, and we'd like to say bye.